Hi, guys. What can I get you guys today?
I don't know what to order.
Would you like to hear the story of how I learned what to order?
Whoa! What is that?
That's called a big rig, little lady, and that's the best dead-gum meal here at Schatz Crossroads.
Don't wait just a gall-darn minute, Harry. You know darn well the best thing about Schatz is breakfast. A 99 is how it's done.
You mean a 109?
No, I don't.
The real pros know that it starts with dessert. No matter what you get, everything begins with a caramel roll.
Hey, little dude. The truth is, there's a lot of right answers on this menu. My favorite is the golden crispy chicken strips and crinkle cut fries. Just listen to your heart, and you can't go wrong. Now go make that order, bud. Oh, hey, kid. Whatever you do, don't forget the ranch.
So what you're saying is, as long as I follow my heart, I can't make a wrong choice?
No, kid. The point of the story is order whatever you want.
All right. I'll take a big rig, a 99, a 109, an order of chicken strips with crispy fries, and I'd take a caramel roll to start with, please. Wait, and don't forget the ranch.
At Schatz Crossroads, we make 8 gallons of homemade ranch dressing every day. So you can smother your dinner salad with it, dip those crispy golden french fries in it, and dunk your breaded chicken strips. You can even cover your... Wait, no. You can't put ranch on steak. Or can you? Schatz Crossroads. Don't forget the ranch.
2021-22, the season is upon us for North Dakota high school hockey. Good evening, welcome in. It's the Schatz Crossroads truck stop and Econo stop, bringing you the WDA preview show here on the PSP Network. Nick Holberg joined by Bob Gillen from North Dakota High School Hockey.com here at the PSP Network studio offices just south of the Magic City. Bob, first of all, welcome in. Are you ready for hockey to start here in 2021?
It's time. We had our first snow, and the temperatures are getting to hockey temperatures, so let's get the puck drop next week and have some fun.
It's going to be a fun year. It always is. Let's start with you here, Bob, and your role with North Dakota High School Hockey.com. The amount of time, the amount of effort, what you put into promoting these young athletes across North Dakota is really something that deserves a lot of credit. And I want to touch on this just for a moment. A few things. First of all, when did you start North Dakota High School Hockey.com, and why did you start North Dakota High School Hockey.com?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's 23 years already starting this season, and I don't know how long I'm going to be able to go, but I'll keep going until either they take it away from me, or my wife says I have to quit, or Mother Nature says I have to quit. But I stopped coaching in Hazen-Beulah in 1999 to take a job with the Grand Forks Park District as a recreation coordinator and a youth hockey coordinator. And while I was in Hazen, websites weren't really going yet. We were still using fax machines, but I started sending out the standings at that time when I was coaching, and just because there's really not a lot of stuff in the newspapers for high school hockey. And when I got to Grand Forks, then I have to give my plug to Coach Dean Wilson, a longtime Fargo South coach there. And he asked when websites were first going, I'd be interested in doing more than just the standings and just to promote the kids, because it was always basketball, football, and those sports in the newspapers. And so I got with a web server that was a lot more ancient than what I'm using now, and here I am still doing it 23 years later. But like you said, I did it because I wanted to stay with the game, not coaching, and I developed a lot of great relationships with referees and coaches and just hockey people around the state, and being born and raised in Grand Forks and in North Dakota, and active with hockey, and that it kept me with the game. But I have to thank Dave Carlsrud, who was the head of the High School Activity Association at the time, and now Matt Fetch, for allowing me to still do this. I mean, they have the technology now where the schools can enter in the stats, and they do it for other sports. And I know they had talked to me about 7 years ago saying that, we have the technology to do it if you want to step away, because I know it's a lot of time and effort on your end. And at that time, I asked the coaches, what do you want? And they really stepped up to the plate and said, we want you to still do it. We can have statisticians do it, but you do such a great job, and we know everything's accurate and timely. And so I went back to high school activities, and they said, as long as you want to do it, we'll let you do it. So I have to thank them, because it's their program, and they're just letting me, do this as a passion. And so I just really thank them for allowing me to do it, and I thank the coaches for stepping up and supporting me in doing this.
We, as a hockey community, thank you for doing what you do. I mean, from the broadcast standpoint, all the way to the scouting standpoint, all the way to coaches breaking down what they're going to run for lines or ideas, or the coaching brain going off. What you do really is beneficial across the board to our sport, to the promotion of these kids. So thank you on behalf of everyone in the hockey community, because without you, guys like me certainly wouldn't enjoy the job I have as much as I do, Bob. So thank you.
Yeah, and I get a lot of emails from sports reporters and broadcasters, and the late Matt Malm, longtime Red River hockey coach, is now passed on. But he when people would come to him, Tom Miller and Kevin Fee and those guys in Grand Forks would go to him to get stats from the players, do an article on a player, and he didn't care about. He just was there to coach and hopefully win a state championship. So he didn't have any of that stuff. And so now these guys can go in, and the website I have now is only archived back to 2007. I started this in 2000. I'm trying to get the other years up, but now they can go back and do stories, and they can look up if it's a senior, they can look up his past 3 or 4 years without bothering a coach. They can get all that off my site, get their stories developed, and then they just have to go get a couple quotes, which coaches are willing to do. So that's a good part about the site. And also, I think now kids can go and compare where they're at, and they can see the standings, and that's what I'm doing it for. I'm not in it. I'm not selling advertising. I'm not in it for any monetary gain. I get a little stipend, but I've got a webmaster I pay half my little stipend to. I take my expenses when I go to the state tournaments, and then what's ever left is my thank you money. But it's nothing I'm doing as a side job or anything to get rich on. I'm doing it because it's a passion, and I truly believe in North Dakota high school hockey, and want to promote these kids and make it easy for you as a broadcaster, and for the media, and give the people out there something to go look at and view and see how everyone's doing, as both as teams and as players.
I sure appreciate that. North Dakota High School Hockey.com is where you can find the stats, and like Bob mentioned, archived years back. We're going to have a bunch of those stats in the show tonight as we break down each team inside of the West region here for 21-22. New teams coming in like Bismarck Legacy. We're going to talk on them a little bit. We're going to talk on each team, what they lose, what they bring back, what to watch for here in 21-22. We're also going to have our picks on who the top 4 will be when the dust settles. I have to proudly say that I have been to the VFW Sports Center since last year when I picked the Demons not to go to the state tournament, and my tires were not slashed. So thank you, everybody in the capital city. And my thoughts might change here in 2021. Stick around to the end of the show and see if I've got the Demons in the mix at the end of the year here this year. We'll also unveil the coaches poll here for 21-22 tonight on this show. So a lot of good stuff coming your way here on the PSP Network. Why don't you say we hop right into it and look at what went down last year inside of North Dakota high school hockey. Let's start with the final standings and the way things shook out. The numbers on the right side of the screen are the points, and we had some battles inside of North Dakota high school hockey last year. Teams in blue are the ones that made the North Dakota high school hockey state tournament. Century and Minot tied with 41 points at the end of the year when the dust settled. It came down to the tiebreaker, which was a goal differential where Century had an extra goal on the Magi and an empty net goal that was scored in the game in Bismarck with Minot and Century at the VFW Sports Center. Here's a note for all young players and all kids watching. That end of that play cost Minot High a region championship here for 2021 last year. The play isn't over till the play is over, and here's a prime example of that at the top of the list. Jamestown came in number 3 last year. They were good, and they're going to be good again here in 2021-22. 38 points for them. Kind of fell off a table after that, Bob, as you look at the Coyotes from Williston. 28 points. They were right there with Bismarck High, that 4 and 5 spot. You could flip and flop that either way. The Demons ended up in 5th. 21 points for Botno Rugby, the Cinderella story last year of North Dakota high school hockey. The Braves, led by Ian Amsbaugh, went to the state tournament for the first time in a few years. Dickinson ended up with 10 points on the year. They went 3 and 13. So did Mandan. And then Hayes and Beulah 0 and 15 last year when the final standings shook down. Any big surprises to you last year, Bob, on how things fell into place when the dust settled at the end of the year?
Well, I think, most years it's the two Bismarcks and Minot always get kind of put at the top 3 positions. And I thought that Williston was going to have a nice team, and they did. And Jamestown, I really felt sorry for them because they had such a great season. And then to go into the region tournament and Botno just came out with that 7-4, win and just bombarded them. And then, to come back. And then Dickinson, who was young and for their standards, didn't have maybe the season that they normally have as far as, the midgets go, and then to knock them off and knock Jamestown out in 2 games was kind of the biggest surprise I had. And, but like going back to what you were saying, Nick, I mean, we have a game coming up now on Monday. Minot starts out with Devils Lake in a conference game, but you said 1 goal changed that seed. Well, that's what I'm saying is that you have to take every game. There's only 21. That count in the standings, and that first game is just as important as the last game. And if you lose the first game, you're saying to your kids, hey, we still have a long season ahead. But look at how that shaked out between Century and Minot. So every game, and then especially with the shootout loss and the overtime points, and those can split those 3 points, and they all matter. And it's such a short season, as we talked about before we went on air, and you have to take every game as it's the most important one because it's such a short season.
It's going to be fun to see what shakes down again this year in 21-22. Again, another look at those final standings from last year, Bob. Let's move on to the show and take a peek now at last year's top producers inside of the West region. There was some scoring to be had in western North Dakota. The east side of the state actually dominated this category. The Panzer kid over there and Kennelly, I mean, obviously those guys were the real deal last year. But the West was represented very nicely last year. Ian Amsbaugh led the charge for the West region, 43 points for him. He was a senior at Botno Rugby. He was good in the Lumberdome. That 43 points was off his pace from his first 2 years at Botno, or I should say the 2 prior years at Botno. Of course, he played plenty of games there for that crew. Dave Hoff and Nostal, the new head coach up in Botno. He still led the state on the west side, 43 points for him. 41 for Colton Schulte. He was the West Region Player of the Year for Bismarck Century. 24 goals, 17 assists for Schulte. 41 for Jace Thompson from Jamestown of the Blue Jays. Talk about a couple guys at the top of this list that had a different makeup completely across the board in their style of play. But at the end of the day, those top 3 were guys that certainly got the job done and found a way to bury the biscuit when they needed to. And, of course, you need to talk about Nolan Nenow, Ashton Collins as well, and Samarzik, Jaden Luck as well. You go down this entire list all the way down to Jackson Ekblad from Williston, who's the first D-man that cracks this list with 28 points. Colin Curl from Century, another D-man. He had 25. There's a look at your top 10 as Dawson Shirley last year rounded out that top 10. Bismarck High's Hunter Anker, Hunter Nelson from Jamestown, Aiden Morelli from Minot, Kyle Mischke from Williston, and Landon Rosendahl round out the top 15. We really were treated to some high-end talent last year inside of West Region High School hockey, and those numbers on the right side of the screen certainly prove that.
Yeah, and you said, Braden Panzer led the state, and I think he had like 64, 65 points from Grand Forks Central, and now he's, playing right here in the city that we live in Minot with the Minotauros and having a good start to there. But the thing that's interesting to me, Nick, is, back in the day, I think Mike Peluso still holds a single-season scoring record of 99 points in one season, and I remember Charlie Bear played for Mandan in, I think, the mid-2000s, early 2000s, and he had 80 points in a season, and now you see Amsbaugh, who had a little less points than he had his junior year, but I think we have more parity now, and we don't have that top end talent in the West, and then kind of the weaker teams in the West where they were building up those points, and then they go to the state tournament and they're not winning, and they're saying, well, they're getting all those points because they have weak teams out there. So I think part of it is just the parity between top and bottom now is getting better in the West, so that we're not having those 80-point seasons anymore. It's not that the players aren't as good as they were back then. I just think now the teams top to bottom are better, so we're not seeing those runaway point guys out West. But they're still, like you said, I mean, Schulte is a great player. I really liked watching him, and Amsbaugh. I mean, a person like Ambaugh, Botno doesn't have the depth of some of these big cities, and so he logged so much ice time, and he had to pick his spots. When he wanted to go, he was the best player out there, but he just kind of coast. And then when he saw he could get maybe a pick off a pass, or he could get the end-to-end rush, he'd go, and he was a dominant player. But with all that ice time, you can't go 100% the whole time, and they ran him, and they had to, but when he wanted to go, and that he was a dominant player. So it'd be fun to see him when he has a full depth bench that he can just go out there and play his 30-40 second shift and go with the skill level that he shows.
We'll talk about him a little bit more coming up when we break down Botno. Back to those top producers. By the way, sidebar, when I was with the Bismarck Bobcats in the early 2000s, Charlie Bear came over from Mandan, first ever kid from Mandan to play in the North American Hockey League or go to juniors. Charlie Bear was quite a player, nice kid too as well. He was definitely a powerhouse for the Braves back in that 2000 time frame. What comes back to the West region, Bob? That's the question that comes up next. And here's the players that come back to the WDA here for another season, the guys that didn't graduate or move on to play junior hockey. Jamestown's Nolan Nenow is a player that we talked about as somebody that you better watch now, because the bus will be coming to pick him up to take him somewhere for a further career in hockey, whether it be in the USHL or the North American League. You can almost stamp that guaranteed. 40 points for him last year as a sophomore. He leads the West region in point production coming back. Ashton Collins from Williston. Now, this is a kid that had 35 points last year and kind of a poster boy for the Coyotes, of course, with Ekblad, who you see at number 4 there, Jaden Luck from Minot in between those two Williston Coyotes. But Collins is a kid that is going to have to carry a load for Williston here this year, score plenty of points, but he's another guy that there's talks about going on after his high school career. Jaden Luck from Minot, let's turn our attention to him. 28 points last year. A playmaker with 20 assists on the season. He only scored 8 times, but a kid that certainly has been around on the block for Minot High since his freshman year, where he kind of emerged at the North Dakota State High School Hockey Tournament. Look for Luck to be big for the Magi here in 21-22. Talk about Ekblad, that D in red. He's the only defenseman on this list that cracks the top 10. In your mind, Bob, how good is Jackson Ekblad from the Williston Coyotes?
I'm glad he stayed. I'm sure he had opportunities to leave. He was that good, and I'm glad that he's staying. And same with Ashton Collins, because they're going to be, if they come to your rink and you have nothing going on, you got to get out and watch some of these players on this list. Nenow, Collins, Jaden Luck. I don't know. As far as getting more goals, he's a great setup guy. Can they now get to that 10, 12, 15 goal plateau for the Magicians, which they'll need? But he's a great player, and I just think right now we've got some very good hockey players that are going to be coming out of the West, and it'd be fun to see. But if you get a chance to watch the two Williston guys, get to the rink, because they are fun to watch. And Jackson, being a defenseman, the points he puts up, again, he can rush. And he's got a great shot from the point, and he doesn't afraid to get into the offensive zone and make some things happen before he has to get back for his D responsibilities. He's
a good player. He's going to be fun to watch. So is Hunter Anker from Bismarck High, the Demon with 23 points. He's going to have to carry a load for Bismarck High this year as well. Hunter Nelson from Jamestown, also a senior, 23 for him last year. Remington Richardson from Bismarck High had 20 last year as a junior. Colton Getzloff from Botno, the youngest player on this list in the top 10. As a freshman, he scored 20. We'll talk about him a little bit more coming up. Tweet at us at Network PSP or comment on Facebook. Is he the next Eric Kerbel, Harrison Aid, or Ian Amsbaugh? Is that the question of the day or what? I think that this Getzlaff kid is one that you're going to want to watch for moving forward. Matt Olsen, a good player up there as well, 18 points for him last year. And then Ben Sankstu from Minot, 18 points, cracks our top 10 of WDA returning players here in 21-22. It's the WDA Hockey Preview Show here on the PSP Network, powered by our friends at Schatz Crossroads and Econo Stop. Come on back. We're going to break down each team across North Dakota in the western side of the WDA when we come back, starting with Legacy. And the Sabres, a team that comes to us for the first time ever as they add high school hockey to their list of athletics sanctioned by the school coming up here in 21-22. Don't forget, later on in the show tonight, Bob and I will make our picks on who's going to the state tournament. We'll also have the coaches poll unveiling tonight as well. It is the preview show for WDA Hockey 21-22, powered by Schatz Crossroads and Econo Stop. Don't go anywhere. More to come here on the PSP Network.
Hi, guys. What can I get you guys today?
I don't know what to order.
Would you like to hear the story of how I learned what to order?
Whoa! What is that?
That's called a big rig, little lady, and that's the best dead gum meal here at Schatz Crossroads.
Don't wait just a gall-darn minute, Harry. You know darn well the best thing about Schatz is breakfast. A 99 is how it's done.
You mean a 109?
No, I don't.
The real pros know that it starts with dessert. No matter what you get, everything begins with a caramel roll.
Hey, little dude. The truth is, there's a lot of right answers on this menu. My favorite is the golden crispy chicken strips and crinkle cut fries. Just listen to your heart, and you can't go wrong. Now go make that order, bud. Oh, hey, kid. Whatever you do, don't forget the ranch.
So what you're saying is, as long as I follow my heart, I can't make a wrong choice?
No, kid. The point of the story is order whatever you want.
All right. I'll take a big rig, a 99, a 109, an order of chicken strips with crispy fries, and I take a caramel roll to start with, please. Wait, and don't forget the ranch.
WDA Hockey Preview Show presented by Schatz Crossroads and Truck Stop here on the PSP Network. Home to the famous number 99 at Schatz Crossroads. Bob joins us tonight. Bob Gillen from NorthDakotaHighSchoolHockey.com. Nick Holbrook from PSP Network. Are you a fan of Schatz Crossroads, yes or no? I mean, that is some good stuff, isn't it?
Yes, Tanya and I go there a few times throughout the month, and I'm not one to get the 99, but I do love their pancakes and omelets.
I'm a big caramel roll fan out there.
Caramel rolls too, yes.
It's all good. Hey, by the way, team buses always welcome at Schatz Crossroads on the 2 and 52 bypass east. When you're coming to town, bringing the team, bringing the family to these high school hockey games in the Magic City, make sure to stop by Schatz on the way out of town or pregame at Schatz Crossroads Restaurant. All right, time to break down the teams inside of the WDA. Bob, you ready to go through this? We've got plenty. There's 10 now inside of the WDA. Yes. Plenty to talk about. Let's start now with our WDA preview show breakdown of the teams. We're going to start with a team that nobody knows anything about. Why? It's their first year inside of North Dakota high school hockey. Notable changes, key returners, 0-0, of course. Question marks. Question mark about everything here, Bob, except coaching, because Legacy went out and grabbed an absolute gem in Mario Lamoureux, who will be the first-year head coach and the first-ever coach of the Legacy Sabres. Grand Forks, North Dakota product, played his high school hockey at Grand Forks Central. He went on to play in the United States Hockey League. That note down on the bottom, he actually played in the USHL at Tri-City with Jordan Willard, the assistant coach of the Mountain High Magicians. That was before, of course, that Mario Lamoureux went on to play at the University of North Dakota for the Fighting Sioux back in his day, went on to pro hockey. A guy that certainly knows his business, and the word on the street is that Ryan Farragher, one of the best goaltenders all time of the Bismarck Bobcats, is helping this staff as well. So we know that they're going to be in good shape there. Some question marks here on how things are going to go in year number one, building a program from scratch. They don't get a whole ton of players from Bismarck Century and Bismarck High, 3 according to what we could dig up, and the roster's not here yet. What do you expect out of the Legacy Sabres here for 21-22, Bob?
Yeah, just quick disclaimer, I mean, we don't have all the rosters yet from the team, so we're going off of last year's rosters and taking out the seniors. And so if we have some players that are, have left and or we're talking about thinking they're here, I mean, that's why, is we don't have all the updated rosters that we were hoping to have. So just kind of bear with us if you're at home saying, well, he's not even on that team anymore. But going back to your point, Nick, I think you don't know any of the 3 Bismarck schools right now what's really going to happen with this. I think long term it's going to be great. Their youth program is big, and there's more spots now for kids. I don't think you're going to see kids dropping off Pee Wee and Bantam hockey now, knowing there's another 20 varsity spots and 15, 20 JV spots. So that's good for the youth program, and in time, I think all 3 will be back to where they were at the top end of the West Region standings, but it might take a little bit of time now to kind of adjust to players now maybe going to a different school because they live in that neighborhood with legacy there. But you can't beat getting the coaching staff and going out and getting Mario Lambert. So I think just having that right there and his experiences as a pro player and being a North Dakota player himself growing up in Grand Forks is huge, and he's been through this himself playing at Grand Forks Central and has been to the state tournament, and he knows what it's about. So I think getting that local flavor and some of the Scott professional experience is a very, very good start for Legacy.
His brother, Jacques Lamoureux, is the captain of the Bobcats back in my first start of my career. One of the fondest memories I have was watching Jacques Lamoureux at the start of the first period against the Billings Bulls one night, put his helmet on the ice politely, spin it around like a top, drop his gloves, and just absolutely throttle a guy from Billings. I'll never forget that as long as I live. It's a hockey name and a family that brings toughness, they bring skill, but they bring such a hockey mind. And Mario Lamoureux certainly has that. Best of luck to Mario and the Legacy Sabres here in the first ever year for high school hockey. Let's turn our attention now to Hayes and Beulah. The North Stars, this is a team that didn't have the year they wanted to last year. They were winless. They went 0-15 in the West, 0-16 overall. Dan Fry in his 9th season coaching the North Stars. Here's what they lose after the 21 season last year. Landon Saylor's out. He had 10 points last year. He graduated. What do they bring back? Well, their tops is Zane Phelps, who comes back with 4 goals and 5 assists for 9 points on the season. Some question marks here, Bob. Can the Hayes and Beulah North Stars compete in 21-22? They're a team that last year got outscored 125-22 on the year. They were outshot 793-291. You used to coach at Hayes and Beulah. Obviously, these are numbers that the North Stars and their fans want to see changed. It's a program that has 3 state tournament appearances all the way back to 2004 being their last. What do we know about Hayes and Beulah? What does the future look like for the North Stars?
Yeah, and Coach Fry is, he's realistic. You've got to have, depth, which I think their youth program is starting to show that they have more than one team at each level now, which is the first start. You want to get that building block, and then you've got to get the kids now that go out there and just don't come out for the 4 months of high school hockey. You got to put the work in the off season and in the weight room and doing some stuff away from the rink and away from the season if you want to be in the top spots in the West region or come statewide. So that's what these kids have to continue to do is once you get the numbers there. I think the big thing for them is losing Bardson and net. They've got Coach Fry's son is there, and they have another goaltender that got some minutes last year. But that's going to be the biggest thing is, you have to, as you're growing this program and maybe you don't have the depth and the skill of some of the upper teams, is you got to have a guy that can, put up a 35-40 save game for you and keep you in a game. And hopefully you can, grind out a few goals and see what happens. But that's, I think, to me is, can his 2 goaltenders now coming behind Bardson fill that role and give him that building block in the net and then work from there.
Always important, that goaltender position, especially on a team that gets outshot the way they did last year, 793-291. Whoever's in goal, be ready for another onslaught of pucks coming your way, and we're hoping that Hayes and Beulah and Coach Fry have a good year here this year, and the future continues to look up and is bright. Let's talk about the Mandan Braves. Leif Matson checking into the preview show tonight, former Minot High magician. Yes, Leif, we need a Mandan jersey for our backdrop. We've got a bunch of old-school Minot junior hockey teams back here, the Americans, the Top Guns, Muskies, all that sort of stuff. We certainly would like to fill this office at the PSB Network with West Region teams. We'll take one. I'll tell you a funny story about the Jamestown jersey back here later when we get there. Sure, Matt Stockert's watching tonight as well. Matson is in his 5th year. They play at the Starion Sport Complex, a beautiful arena, one of the better venues inside of the West Region. A team that last year didn't fare so well at home, however. They went 3-13 overall, 3-13 in the West, 4-15 overall. They didn't qualify for the state high school hockey tournament. They do have 6 appearances, however, Bob, the last one coming back in 2019. They had some guys to do it last year as well. It was almost a break or bust season, in my opinion, last year for Mandan, with Yancer, who had 18 points. Fay had 17. Drew Condon had 17. Killen and Halston Guard 9 and 6, respectively. And the big one here for me that changes for the Mandan Braves is they lose Zane Clausen. He had a 92% save percentage, a .345 goals against average, and some of the best pads and goalie paint mask in the entire WDA. They lose him. What do they bring back? Well, not a whole ton up front. Carter Killen had 6 points last year. Brady Helbling had 4. Pair of juniors, that's the top producing tandem that comes back here for Leif Madsen's crew. In my mind, the question marks, where's the scoring going to come from? Do they have goaltending? That will be a familiar song and dance for a lot of these teams in the West region. But a Mandan team that we know, Bob, at the end of the day, Leif Madsen's going to have them battle ready and ready to go, whether they've got that skill and the cupboard's full or not. We know they're going to be gritty and hardworking. In your mind, what do you expect out of Mandan here this year?
Yeah, it's kind of like we sat down and did our notes together, and we didn't, ladies and gentlemen. But a lot of the same notes you have on the screen is what I have in my notes personally. But, yeah, I mean, they lost 5 of their top scorers, their 1 through 5 guys from last year. 7 of their top 10 scorers graduated. And then, like I said, you lose Clausen on a 4 and 15 team. You'd expect a goalie to have about an 86% save percentage and, 5 or 6 goals against average. And he had respectable numbers, 3.45 goals against average, 92% save percentage. And so for a team with a 4-win season, he was what you needed. And I know Leif had a lot of, good players last year in the answer. And you got the Halston Guard, he was one of those that you want to talk about playing hard and getting in the corners and blue collar mentality. He was one of those too. He would get in there and dig for pucks, and maybe didn't get a lot of the points, but he played hard. I liked watching him. So, but yeah, that's the thing. They're just going to have to, they've got, again, with that new rink, they've got good numbers in the youth program, and of course a lot of energy with the new Starion Center, and Leif's been around the block. He's a good coach, and he's, like I said, he played high school hockey himself and knows what it takes to compete. And they'll get the players back in and get the job done. But I think goaltending again is, like you said, the biggest question mark. And then who's going to be the goal scorers for the Braves?
Who will be the goal scorers for the Braves? Big question mark. Same question mark for the Dickinson Midgets. Let's talk about them now on a team that, in my opinion, has one of the better coaches across Western North Dakota. You can't really say that, I guess, because they're all really good. I have a lot of respect for Dallas Koontz. The way that he has performed in his 8 seasons now. This is year number 9 for him. He's a guy that just really seems to have a lot of poise with that program and that entire community. Also the program director for the Dickinson youth hockey program. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the top programs in North Dakota as far as growth is concerned. We can have you touch on that in a moment here, Bob, but let's talk about the notable changes first here for the Midgets. They lose Crump and Ahmed, 25 combined points for those 2 players. Not a whole ton of offensive production there, but they bring some guys back. One of them, the big one for me, is Jace Concha, the goaltender, .377 goals against average and an 87% save percentage. Like you mentioned with Hayes and Beulah, let's start from the blue paint and work out. They've got Evan Grohl, 12 points last year as a junior. Caden Dvorak as a freshman had 10. Geese had 9 as a sophomore. And Quinn Lewis, the senior this year, he had 8 last year as a junior. So they've got some guys back. Not a whole ton of top-end talent maybe compared to some of the others, the Nenows and guys like that across the state. But they're going to have some depth here, it looks like. Can they find a guy to bury the puck more than 12 points is the question mark. What will their defensive coverage be like is the other question mark for me. And when you look at this program from Dickinson, you go back to 16, 17, and 18, Bob, they were at the state high school hockey tournament. They became a staple there for 3 years in a row, a few years off now, but a program that has some of the top growth in North Dakota, the program numbers. Your thoughts on this Dickinson Midget program? First and foremost, the initial question, is that program still growing the way that it was with the program numbers?
Yeah, and I actually talked to Coach Koontz earlier this week, and he informed me, which I didn't know, but he said they're looking at, if not next year, the year after, where they're going to have enough to field a junior gold team. in the North Dakota Amateur Hockey Association Goalie, which is also high school hockey. So their numbers are phenomenal, and that goes back again. I think one of the nice things about some of these programs, I know like Coach Fry and Hazen and some of the smaller communities, a lot of their hockey directors also coach the top end team, which is their high school team. So you have that connection with your youth players, your youth coaches, and you kind of have tabs on the players and the numbers, and I think that's a real key where some of the bigger cities you maybe have a little bit of distance between your high school coach and then your youth players. So I think Dallas is very active with his youth program, and just a great guy and very positive, and he knows last year where he was at. He had a young team, and he knew there was going to be some growing pains, but he knows the numbers are coming up. He's got a good nucleus coming back. He's got a goaltender, I think, that can be the backbone for that team. And I want to see how Evan Grohl develops, because I really liked watching him. And he didn't have a lot of points last year, but he was very noticeable on the ice when he was, I know in Minot, and then when I saw him a few other places that I was at games at. And so I really enjoyed watching him, and I think he's going to have to be the leader for the midgets early on here until these other young players can get into their roles and find their success with which lines they're on.
It's going to be a fun one. Again, midgets are always competitive. They're always tough, it seems like. 3-13 last year, obviously the numbers they didn't want to have, and 4-15 overall. They didn't qualify for the state tournament, but a team that we look forward to having a better run here in 21-22. Let's move on and talk about a team that had a Cinderella season last year. It's the Bottineau Rugby Braves. Jesse Nosdahl takes over for one of the best all-time, if not the best all-time, Dave Hoff, who went on to coach the Paralympic program and Team USA sled hockey, a guy that is respected in the hockey world across the board. Some big shoes to fill here for Jesse Nosdahl. And in year number 2, he takes the Bottineau Rugby Braves to a 7-8 mark inside the West region, 9-10 overall. They make the North Dakota High School Hockey Tournament, and they're a team that they weren't going to win a region title last year like they did in 1993, but they were a team that was bound and determined to make it to the state high school hockey tournament. The problem with this year is that here's what they lose from last year. Ian Amsbaugh with 43 points, who goes down as one of the best players to play in North Dakota high school hockey. He was an animal, to say the least. Landon Rosendahl had 22 points last year as well. Big one for me, Tyler Olsen, a goal, 89% save percentage, and a .387 goals against average. Not the best numbers that you're going to see from kids that are missing last year, but a guy that backstopped this Bottineau team to the promised land. He was good enough to get the job done, and in my opinion, on certain nights was the best goaltender in the West region when he had to be. And defensively, they lose Rybczynski and Bieberdorf also. What do they bring back? Well, not as much as they lost last year. They bring back Colton Getzloff, the sophomore. We saw him in our top 10 returners in North Dakota high school hockey on the west side of the state. 14 goals, 6 assists last year for the freshman, 20 points for him. Matt Olsen had 18 points last year. Two guys that will need to carry the load here, Bob. Is this a fair question on my question marks category? Is Getzloff the next Aid, Herbal, or Amsbaugh? I mean, really, a freshman with 20 points at the Lumberdome, if they produce and continue to grow the way that all those guys that are listed here and others have for years, 20 turns into 40, and 40 turns into 60, and 60 turns into 80. If the surroundings are right for him, how much do you like Colton Getzlaff? Is he an ex-Billboard player for the Bottineau Rugby Braves in your mind?
Well, if history shows, yes, because Bottineau seems to always have someone leading the state in scoring, and to put those numbers up as a freshman, and the sky's the limit for him. And I know there's some good players coming up from the youth program as well. So if he sticks out, the rest of his time and stays for a senior year, I think he can, certainly be up there with, the Harrison Aids and the Amsbaughs and that. But I just want to quickly go back and just, I don't think people realize, David Hoff is 30 plus years coaching high school hockey, but, from Little Bottineau, North Dakota. But here's our, coming up sled hockey Olympic coach. Could come from any of the 50 states. And we've got David Hoff, and then his assistant's Corey Gorder, who played for Bottineau and still living in Bottineau. But that's amazing to me. That just shows how much respect David Hoff has, not only in North Dakota, but, through the United States to go to Little Bottineau, North Dakota and pull a gem like David Hoff and to see the success that he and Corey have done. And then a general manager is a good friend of mine with my role with USA Hockey, but Dan Brennan, those guys have just done a great job with their sled program. So I just want to give a shout out, but I mean, you could have someone from Chicago or L.A. or Dallas, whatever, and here we pluck our
North
little
Dakota.
David off, and I hated to see him leave Botno, but Jesse has done a great job picking up, and he played for the Braves himself, and he's young and energetic, and I think he had a good year last year. So I think, like you said, goaltending is going to be their biggest question mark, and then again they lost 3 very quality defensemen that you mentioned there as well. So I think the back end's going to be their concern. I think they're going to have some offense. I think they're going to be fine up front. It's going to be, can they replace their defensemen, and who's going to be between the pipes to fill the void of Olsen.
On the notes category on this one, Bob, Amsbod, Rybczynski are at Dakota College at Botno, continuing their hockey careers, kind of like Harrison A. did. The other note here, cold winter equals more wins at the Lumberdome. And that's not supposed to be a joke. That's for real. That place is hard to play in, and it's a place that if you get a freezing cold winter and one that is abnormally, I shouldn't even say abnormally, but a good old-fashioned North Dakota winter, that Botno win column goes from 7 to 9 maybe in a quick hurry, depending on how cold it can be at the Lumberdome, one of the greatest places to play in all of North Dakota high school hockey. It's the WDA preview show here on the PSP Network, powered by Schatz Crossroads Restaurant. Don't forget, team buses are always welcome at Schatz Crossroads, home to the famous number 99. 5 more teams to preview when we come back. And don't forget, tonight we'll have our predictions on who the top 4 that will go to the state high school hockey tournament are. We'll also release the coaches poll here tonight for the West region. Don't go anywhere. More of the preview show of the WDA hockey season here for 2021. It's going to be a fun year. 4 more teams to talk about the top 5 from last year when we return.
At Schatz Crossroads, we make 8 gallons of homemade ranch dressing every day, so you can smother your dinner salad with it, dip those crispy golden French fries in it, and dunk your breaded chicken strips. You can even cover your... Wait, no. You can't put ranch on steak. Or can you? Schatz Crossroads. Don't forget the ranch.
The ranch on the steak is my go-to, actually, at Schatz Crossroads Restaurant. Place is fantastic. They bring you the preview show for the 21-22 North Dakota high school hockey season. Nick Holberg here from the PSP Network. We're going to have a load of games on the PSP Network, brought to you by yours truly. Matt Morelli will join me for the call of the Minot High matchups on the PSP Network this year. Working on some gentlemen out of Bismarck as well for some of those matchups in the capital city this year. It's Bob Gillen from North Dakota High School Hockey.com. We're halfway through going through our teams and what to expect this year inside of gameplay and inside of those locker rooms. And we have the top 5 from last year that remain now. And when you talk about teams that are going to be in the conversation for those 4 that are going to make the high school hockey tournament, the top 5 inside of the West region, you add a Bismarck legacy into this mix here, Bob, and things are going to change just a little bit, especially when you look at who's returning what. We're going to dive into that right now again as we take a peek at the Bismarck High Demons. Mentioned it in the prelude of the show here tonight that I didn't make any friends from Bismarck last year on the Demons side of things, but a team that was down just a bit last year, uncharacteristic of a program that has had so much success inside of the WDA, and a team that, in my opinion, is probably going to be back here in 21-22. They're led by Wes Carr in his 3rd year as the head coach of the Bismarck Demons. They're going to play at the VFW this year and Capitol Ice Complex, a storied program in Western North Dakota with 11 WDA titles. Their last came in 2017. Since then, it's been Monitor Century, a team with 1 state championship that happened under Mike Peluso's direction in 2014. They've been to the state tournament 37 times, but they didn't go last year. 9-7 overall, finished 5th, 10-9 inside of the state. 9-7 in the West, 10-9 overall. Here's what the Demons lose from last year. Maybe the biggest one inside of the entire preview show tonight. Logan Hendrickson was a kid that, in my opinion, was the best goaltender in the West region. He and Trey Sortland, on any given night, were going to duke that out. Olsen was good as well. from Botno, but it was Hendrickson that just had an extra element to him, so much so that he's off playing junior hockey now in the USPHL. 91.4% save percentage and a 2-1 goals against average, numbers that are desired by any netminder in any level of hockey. And certainly Hendrickson was the real deal last year. They will miss him in a bad way. Jack Steckler on the blue line had 13 points last year for the Demons, and Nico Mortensen up front had 16. Those are the notable changes off of this Demons team that they lose due to graduation. What does that mean for Bismarck High? Well, that means that the future is going to be bright here, Bob. Hunter Anker, the Grand Forks transplant, had 23 points as a junior. Remington Richardson had 20 as a junior last year. On the blue line, they've got Gavin Rader back there, who's pretty solid. He'll be a junior this year. 10 points for him. Some key returners here for the Demons. Anybody off this list in your mind that I'm missing talking about here for West Cars Club in 21-22?
Well, I mean, those are the two that you have mentioned now with Aker and Richardson are going to be the two go-to players for the Demons, and they have 7 of their top 10 players returning, so I think they've got depth, they've got experience, and I think you hit it with the first notable change. Hendrickson logged every minute of every game last year, so who's going to fill in his shoes? And I think if they can get whoever's off their JV, or if they have someone coming from their Bantam AA or A team that can step in and play to his ability, I think Bismarck is kind of the team I'm picking as kind of a dark horse, because they've got depth and they've got some key people to work around.
They're certainly going to be in the mix. There's no doubt about that, but you mentioned that. You go back to NorthDakotaHighSchoolHockey.com and the stats from last year, there's legitimately no other goaltender that saw a single minute of ice time last year for the Bismarck Demons, so the first question mark and the big one is going to be goaltending. Can they get some secondary scoring? What does this legacy rivalry do to the Demons? Does it help? Does it hurt? What happens there as far as rosters are concerned? And what kind of response is Bismarck High going to have after not making the state high school hockey tournament for the first time since 1989? There's a lot of pride in that program. There's a lot of pride in that city. And the Demons are a team that not only were making it to the state high school hockey tournament on a regular basis since the 80s and since the start of high school hockey, they were a team that really in the mid-2000s there started to really compete at the state high school hockey tournament and started to get into that TV round. Do you think they're kind of like that Botno upset rattlesnake that we talked about last year with a little bit of vendetta on the West region after not making it last year, Bob?
Well, I think both them and Jamestown are going to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder for not making it, but I think it goes back to, again, just the parity. It's not going to be a shoe. I mean, before, I think Bismarck High parents, the Century parents, and Mina parents made reservations in Fargo or Grand Forks because it was almost a given they were going to the state tournament. It was just they took those days off from work, and it's almost like UND fans, just know that we're going to the Frozen Four every year. It's almost a given. So, but now Willistons and Jamestowns are stepping in their way, and it's not an easy trip to Grand Forks or Fargo anymore for these bigger cities and these teams that we see every year. So I don't want to discredit that Bismarck did anything wrong last year. I just think that now there's more teams now that are fighting for those positions. And like you said, you have 1 or 2 bad nights that can affect you in the standings. And then going into a WDA, now you're playing as a 6 seed when you're usually playing as a 2 or 3 seed in previous years. And that, is just a little bit of a different feel now that we haven't had, in years past. But they'll be back. I just right now want to see how the 3 Bismarcks are going to be for the next year or two, because right now the talk is everything's Bismarck's going to fade out, and they're going to be co-oping with either Century or Legacy, and I don't think that's going to happen. Their numbers are too big in Bismarck, but that's the talk now. Is we haven't even dropped the puck, and they're like, is Bismarck High going to have a team in 3-4 years? And we haven't even dropped the puck with the 3 teams we have now, and I think all 3 are going to survive, and I think they're going to do well.
It's going to be fun to see. Fun to see the Demons' response to last year. Bismarck High, are they in the mix to make it to the state tournament? Stick around to the end of the show. We'll make our predictions. Where you will probably see the Coyotes on my list. I've already been on the record saying that Williston is going to be one of the teams to beat inside of the WDA. Williston, North Dakota, Western North Dakota. Stand up in the living room. Get ready. Little shadow boxing, eye of the tiger. This could be your year. Mark it, stamp it, guaranteed. Tyler Junt in year number 7. This is a guy that really brings a lot to the table in the program. How about this for a sidebar before we break down what they lose and what they return? They've got Harrison Aid, Mr. Hockey North Dakota from Botno, running their program and their youth program in Williston. You want to talk about a program that is on the up and up? Well, you've got Harrison Aid running your program and Tyler Junt, who played Division I college hockey in that program, up at the top of the ladder, running the high school program. Jordy Nelson involved. I mean,
Dustin Bratleen, longtime high school coach there.
Bratlean's in the mix.
That's a staff.
I mean, it's a staff. It's a legitimate staff. The Agra Iceplex is a hard place to play in. That's a bigger sheet of ice over in Williston. A team that has never won a WDA title, and that 0 will look to change to a 1 here this year with 9 state tournament appearances. They went last year on an 8-7 West Region record, 10-9 overall. They lost in round number 1, but you know what? They got there, then they had to travel all the way to Grand Forks to play the opening round of the tournament. Here's what they lose. Kyle Mischke had 23 points last year. Hunter Rosland had 13. That Mischke kid was pretty darn good. He was one of those guys that made some things happen. He wasn't the best skater. He wasn't the flashiest skater, but man, did he work and bring his hard hat and lunch pail every single day. And what that meant was guys like Ashton Collins reaped the benefits of Mischke. 35 points for him last year. Don't take anything away from Collins, by the way. I think he's a junior hockey player on the way up as well. 35 points for him. Ekblad, 28. Carter Bakken had 18. Point being is, how are they without Mischke here this year is one of my question marks. But guess what? They're another team that's got Mason Hagenau in goal and another team that's going to have goaltending. And Hagenau comes from a long line of goaltenders in Williston with the same last name of Hagenau. Those poor parents, not only the fingernails, but the pocketbooks as well. 3.32 goals against average and an 8.97 save percentage last year. Bob, is Williston in the mix in your mind? Obviously, we got to get to the end of the show to release the dogs on who's going, but according to numbers, according to what we're seeing right here, are they the real deal in your mind?
Well, I have received their roster, and right now I only have 2 players that aren't going to be back from last year, and those are the 2 that you mentioned, Rosland and Mischke. So they've got 85% of their team coming back, and then whoever comes up from the youth program is just fill-in, and they may have some gems there that could be like Getzlaff with Botno as a freshman or a sophomore that plays and fills in a role. So yeah, Mischke's going to be one that they're gonna hurt, not having out there. But again, they've got depth. They've got a great staff. I mean, for high school hockey, you can't put together a more experienced staff than what they have. They got a goalie that's well tested, and they've got 2 dominant players that I think will be contenders for the Outstanding Senior Award, come February.
It's going to be fun to see. Here's my question marks. Can they stay disciplined, Bob? 246 minutes and penalties last year. That was towards the top of the West region. Discipline's going to be a factor because a team like Bismarck Century, who might be off a little bit this year, is still going to make you pay. Troy Olsen's team will always make you pay on those power plays. There's other teams around the West that are certainly going to do the same thing. Discipline's a big one for me. Can they get some depth in secondary scoring where Collins, Ekblad, and Bakken don't have to do all the work? And can all those guys stay healthy this year is another question mark. But you look at the Coyotes, first state appearance since 2010. Last year they beat the Demons. They tied Minot. They had 1-goal differentials with Century, things that just haven't happened since the time frame that Tyler Junt and Cody Dickerson and Jordy Nelson played there. They've got confidence with some of what they've got going on now, knowing that, hey, Bismarck High rolls into town or Minot comes to town or, hey, we go to Century. We played them last year. We played them tight. It's no longer these blowout games. That X factor right there is going to be interesting to me to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, and I think the penalties isn't because they're a dirty team. I just think that with the staff that they have, they push those kids because they've all played at the high level and they know what it takes. And so they push those kids. And sometimes, depending on who your referee crew is and the flow of the game, sometimes you maybe get tagged for a few penalties that other places maybe don't get tagged. But it's not that they're undisciplined or dirty. They just they play kind of like you talk about Mandan. They just play a really blue-collar type hockey game and really get in the corners and grind and try to throw their physical presence around and win those battles, and probably get called a little bit more for that. But I don't foresee where that's something I'd be too concerned about. But again, when you start getting in penalty troubles, that again puts the big three back on the ice a little bit more. And then when they're out there 5-on-5, now they're tired because they are killing off penalties. So obviously, I'm sure their coaches are going to address that. But yeah, like you said, I think they're deep and they've got some very, very key players. They've got a goalie, and I think they're going to be fun to watch this year.
Blue collar, good way to describe them. I want to touch on this before we're going to talk about Jamestown next, but I want to touch on at the end of the show. Don't let me forget to talk about the coaching staffs in Western North Dakota and what that really means for the programs across Western North Dakota. I want to bring that back up, Bob, if we can. Let's talk now about a program that's got a great coach and a guy that's been there for 17 seasons this year, Matt Stockert to the Jamestown Blue Jays. WDA title, last one happened in 1994. They've won one of them. They're in the hunt this year in 21-22. They just get done winning a state football championship, first football crown in 65 years. Community's got some momentum. Sports programs have some momentum. What do they lose from last year? A stud, Jace Thompson, one of the top players in the West region. 41 points last year for Thompson. 17 goals, 24 assists. Talk about a guy that made some things happen on the top producing line for the Blue Jays. Well, Nenow was there with 40 points. Top returning player inside the West region for point production, by the way. Nenow, that's what that red asterisk means. 23 for Nelson. You mixed in Jace Thompson to that mix. And talk about a guy that got some things done for the Jamestown Blue Jays. Questions. One of them that I have, and we'll get to it in a moment, but I got to ask you right now, how good is Jamestown without Jace Thompson? I mean, does it make that big of a difference not having a kid like that had 41 points, who dug the pucks out of the corners, unlike guys that we've seen in some time? I mean, he was really, really good at that role.
Yeah, and he was 17 and 24, 17 goals, 24 assists, so he wasn't a goal scorer and not a playmaker. He wasn't more of a playmaker and not a goal scorer. He did both roles, so that's going to be the missing piece now. Can they find a person to fill that role? Maybe not put the points up that he did, but can they find a person that if he's got the puck on his stick, can he get the goal, or is he a guy that can get the puck out of the corner and make a play and be that setup guy that Thompson was? So if they can find that person, maybe they have him and wasn't on that line last year, but if they can find that person, Jamestown is, again, depth, and Stockert's been around 17 years. He was the first Mr. Hockey winner when that award started out in North Dakota. So a little trivia question for you kids out there. And I think there's a big chip on these guys' shoulders because they do not like how their season ended. They fully expected to be at the state tournament and to go 2-0 in the West region the way they did against the programs that they played. I know they're coming in and are going to be very energized, and I think you made a good point. Their football team is sending their winter sports into a very positive vibe because I'm sure that just trickles down to all their teams now. And Jamestown's a small, big city, and they get a lot of community support, and I know the football win generated a lot of buzz in Jamestown, and there's a lot of excitement in there right now.
There's a lot of excitement. Matt Stockert's on that football staff, by the way. Congratulations to those kids. 65 years is a long time to go between championships. How about never having one? Blue Jays have never won one in hockey before. Could this be the year? They have goaltending as well here, Bob, with Brody Hillstrom, 286 goals against average, 90.7 save percentage. They've got blue liners. They've got a ton up front. I mean, Jamestown is going to be tough to beat. The other question I had, can they avoid the letdown? Can they avoid having that same dismantling that they had last year? And no knock on anybody from the Buffalo City, but man, you go into the tournament number 3 and fall out of that thing like you fell out of a plane without a parachute and not even make the state high school hockey tournament. It was a disappointing run for them last year. Looking forward to seeing what the Blue Jays do here in 2021. Stick around for the end of the show. Are they in our top 4? Where do the coaches have them? We're going to unveil all that stuff coming up at the end of the program here tonight. Again, it's a preview show brought to you by Schatz Crossroads. Right here in the Magic City, that's where you'll find Schatz's. Team buses are welcome at Schatz Crossroads when you come play the Magi. John Grubb, Jason Bennett, their 7th year with Jordan Willert on the bench as well. Stop at Schatz Crossroads, home to the famous number 99. That Travel Center and Plaza is fantastic. Fantastic stuff. The food is great as well, 24/7 at Schatz Crossroads. What do the Magi bring to the table here in 2021? You want to talk about storied programs? Well, this is one that's got the most state titles of any team in the West region. A monster number of 2. One happened in 92, one happened in 15. I only get a chuckle out of you because you're a Red River guy, back in your playing day. That's where you're from, right, Bob? Red River?
That's correct.
Well, lucky you don't have a stick in your teeth as we walk out of here tonight, only playing with you, Bob. Of course, Minot High in 92 and 15, the 2 state titles. 39 appearances for the Magi. Last year was one of those years. Tied for first in the West region. It came down to the tiebreaker. They took second. Century was the team that had the number 1 spot. The Magi went 14-2 in the West. 16-4 overall. They lost to Fargo South Shanley on their home ice. They ended the year getting shut out 2 games in a row in the WDA title game and the home ice matchup against the South Bruins. Notable changes. You talk about Hendrickson being a big one. How about this one for the Magi? Trey Sortland goes down as one of the greats for the Minot High hockey program. All-state goaltender, 2-time selection, 184 goals against average. He went 14-4 in his senior year. Guy was putting up goose eggs left and right like Big Bird. I mean, he was unbelievable. He was tough to beat last year. Sortland is gone. Who else do they lose? 5 defensemen. 5 kids on the blue line graduated from Minot High. One of the notable ones, Riley Oproot, off playing junior hockey now. He was an all-stater. 22 points for him. They lose Aiden Morelli up front with 23 points. Casey Field had 21. Gabe Thongfent had 10 last year as well. I mean, there's guys here that they lose. The back end is the big question mark for me, because up front they've got some guys coming back. Jaden Luck, 28 points for Luck coming into his senior campaign. 18s for Swankstu, 14 for Deal, 11 for Esslinger, and some young guns coming in off the Bantam program as well. Luck's going to have to carry some of that load here this year. Will he be somebody that can crack 30 points for the Magi? I'm sure that coaching staff would like to see that number closer to 48 this year than 28 if Minot High wants a chance to go back to the state high school hockey tournament to make some noise at the Shields Arena. Goaltending's a question mark for me, Bob. The back end with only 1 returning defenseman and Jackson Bradley coming back is a big question mark. Can they find a franchise player? Minot High for years always had a Fuchs, a Morelli, a Flob, a Schwartz, a Bennett. Somebody, you go back in time even further to Willert and Dittis and Selk. I mean, you go down the list. There's always been somebody. You get into the old school stuff as you go way down the list. I mean, Minot High has always had that top-end guy. Can they find that franchise player? There's another Morelli that's going to be in this lineup as a freshman. He goes by the name of Mac. His brother's playing in the American League, so maybe he's the guy. You see Minot High practice and play every single day. Your thoughts on the Magi coming into 21-22?
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out right now is they're a little low on numbers, believe it or not. That's going to change. But they only have 25 players, both varsity and JV. So but they've also said that next year they could have over 40. So this is going to be, they lost about 11, 12 players, so they've lost a lot of depth, a lot of talent, and a huge vacancy in the net. But they don't have a deep roster, and they don't have, they've got 5 JV guys technically that are just going to be JV. But that's going to be the big question mark, is they don't have depth to replace what they have, so to speak. And they lost, them and Mandan probably had the biggest hits for graduation. So they're going to be an interesting team to see what comes out. But, there's very talented kids coming up from the Bantam level, and they've got some players to work around here with Luck. And I think Deal is going to score more than 1 goal this year. He's a great player, and I think he'll step up his goal total. And Luck has already had a couple. I rent the ice at the Mason. He's already had some captain's practices and got the guys and rented ice away from the high school times, and so he's taken the leadership role. And I think he wants to be that next Magi player to be the leader and be up with some of those big names that have wore the jersey in past years.
Here's a question for you: have you ever seen anything like this? 6 underclassmen that went to other places, not playing high school hockey, guys that still have high school eligibility for Minot High. You got guys like Naring playing at Shattuck St. Mary's and others that have gone to academies. That's just one example. Imagine if Minot High had those 6 guys. It might even be more than that, but 6 that would be here playing for the Magi, Minot High would run the table in the West region without a doubt, in my opinion. I mean, got guys like McIntosh that were drafted into the Western League and players like that, certainly guys leaving Minot to the Magic City hasn't helped the Magicians by any means. And this would be another one of those years, and a team that hasn't won that region tournament since 2006. What would their identity be if they didn't have 6 other guys, 5 or 6 that would be in that program? A question mark and a topic of conversation for another time. Time to talk about the Century Patriots right now. You want to talk about bench bosses that have been around for a while, that are gamers, that know how to get the job done? Troy Olsen's one of those guys, and one of my favorite coaches in all time. He's just so much fun to be around. He just brings so much to the table. It's a positive attitude every time you see him, and you know that he's going to have the Patriots in the mix anytime that he's behind the bench. Year number 17 for Ole this year. VFW Sports Centers, where you find the Patriots playing. They've been to the state tournament 24 times, 0 state titles, a team that they're due for a state crown, Bob, without a doubt. 2021, they won the WDA crown again last year. 3-peat at the WDA tournament, a team that just gets the job done every year. They went 13-2 last year. They lost in round number 1 last year as well in the state tournament. They lost a lot, more than anybody else in my mind in the West region. And I'm having a hard time seeing Century bouncing back after graduating 9 of their top 11 producers that came up with 152 points last year for the Patriots. I mean, my goodness, that's a lot of points that are going to go missing here in 21-22. Schulte was their breadwinner, if you will. He had 41 points last year, the senior athlete of the year in the West region. He was an animal. They had Samarzik, who added 32. Colin Curl added 25. Dawson Shirley had 23. I mean, you look at those numbers right there. 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that had 20 or more. You know you're going to be in the mix with that, Bob. They lost Crew Walker on the back end and Kiefer Long as well, 16-16 there. I mean, that takes a heavy hit to the lineup when you lose that much offensive production. What they bring back, however, is 3 goaltenders that split time last year. It was Odegaard at the end of the year that took the reins and really kind of carried them into the postseason. A 1.78 goals against average, 9.15 save percentage for him. Foslin's back. Josiah Will I have on this list, and Josiah Will is actually going on to play at Legacy, Bob, here. So Josiah Will, I found out right before the show here tonight, he's not even in this mix. Century's not going to have a whole lot coming back, but a pretty darn good Bantam A program. Can Troy Olsen, with a deck of cards that might not be as strong as last year's dealing, bring a team to the table at the end of the year again, in your mind?
Well, I mean, this might be his toughest job as a coach is this year, because he's always had returners, and he's always had depth and always had talent. And I'm not saying they don't have, the talent, but when you look at their roster sheet from last year, I have a lot of crossouts here, and I have to go all the way down to Alex Fosland, who's now a senior, who in 19 games had 3 goals, 11 assists, and 14 points, and that's their leading point guy. They lost 80 goals of the 95 they scored last season. So this is, and I don't know what's coming up and where these Bantams and what schools of the 3 they're going to, and who's getting most of the Bantam players and what talent out of the Bantam. So it's going to be. I know that Century and Legacy, I believe, go out the Friday, Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend to do their annual West Fargo Packer and Fargo North run. So we'll get an early look against some decent East Region teams, and I think that's going to be both our first look at Legacy and what Century is going to look like, because they are not going to look the same as they did last year. And I think that was probably the hurtful thing for Coach Olsen and I know Tom Bushaw very well as well. And this team that was kind of the one they were really banking on to do something at getting to the state and maybe even at the state tournament, and it just didn't go the way that they had hoped.
Certainly did not. 3 years in a row they've won that tournament. My timeline remark there on question marks, how long will it take Coach Olsen to get that team pointed in the direction that he wants, is really what that means heading into 21-22. It's the WDA Hockey Preview Show presented by Schatz Crossroads Restaurant here on the PSP Network. Team bus is always welcome at Schatz. Don't forget to swing into Schatz when you come to the Magic City when your team takes on Minot High in 21-22. Again, team bus is always welcome. Well, Bob, one more break, and then we're going to come back and rustle some feathers probably across western North Dakota here. We're going to make our predictions next on who we believe will be the top 4 when the dust settles, and then the coaches' predictions are here as well with the first coaches poll and the preseason coaches poll for WDA hockey here in 21-22. Don't go anywhere. More of the WDA preview show when we return. It is brought to you by our friends at Schatz Crossroads Travel Center here in the Magic City and the restaurant. Schatz Crossroads, again, open 7 days a week, 365. They are fantastic. Schatz Crossroads brings you the preview show tonight. We'll make our predictions when we come back, and then we'll get you geared up and ready for the opener of North Dakota high school hockey starting next Monday. Don't go anywhere. Fun part of the show comes up next. WDA Hockey Preview Show presented by Schatz Crossroads Restaurant. Nick Holberg alongside of Bob Gillen from North Dakota High School Hockey.com. Always a pleasure to have you join me here, Bob, for these events and these preview shows. Always fun to pick your brain around the state of North Dakota. Coming up in just a moment here, we're going to make our predictions on who we think is going to go to the state high school hockey tournament from the West region. And we have the coaches poll that will be unrailed here in just a moment as well. I wanted to touch on this, though, before we do that, Bob. When you were talking about that staff from Williston with the gentlemen that are there now, Junt and Nelson, and help me, Bratlin was the other one. When you talk about guys like that in the West region that are in Williston, and you talk about guys in Minot like Grubb and Willert and Bennett who are in the Magic City, and you talk about the Lamoureux that are in Bismarck Legacy now, and the Ryan Farragers, and just naming guys off the top of my head that have gone away and come back to their respective cities and had the opportunity to go and play elsewhere. You add that into the mix with guys like Olsen and guys like Stockert that have been around the block for so many years, and no discredit to anybody else in that conversation, because a guy like Nosdahl, a guy like Kuntz, and a guy like Carr, I mean, a guy like Leif Matson, I mean, there's plenty around the WDA that do a great job. However, you start to sprinkle in some of that experience from elsewhere now, where over time and a little bit more and more of that experience is starting to filter its way back into the West region now, where for so many years was always a disadvantage when you played the East region teams, because you had guys in those programs at Red River and at Central that played for the University of North Dakota, teams like that that certainly had just a little bit of an upper hand. We're starting to see that parity starting to come up in the West region. Bob, in your mind, do we see, with the help of some of these coaching staffs, the parity with the WDA starting to be able to compete with the EDC a little bit more, or is that forever going to be a problem for the teams from the west side of North Dakota?
I think the parities are, I still think it's a mental thing. I don't know what it is. I can't put my hand on it, but these teams play each other more now crossover than they used to, 15, 20 years ago. And they compete with these teams. In some cases, they beat them. But when we get to the state tournament, it's just that East mentality. I don't know what it is, but they always seem to get the best of the West teams. And it's not that the West teams can't play with these teams. And sometimes the scores are, 7-1, 8-0. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Because these teams are a lot closer in talent than what the score ended up. But then you get the people all saying, oh, geez, the West. And but I think, the West is a lot better than it was, and I think it's going to continue to get better, and we're seeing that just within the WDA. Now we got to get the WDA to produce a little bit better when they go to the state tournament. But, going to there, now you look at the East region, you got, Tim Scarprud, who played Phoenix, North Dakota and played some professional hockey, and Grant Paranika, and you've got Dean French, and a long time. Troy Miller's been coaching West Fargo for, double-digit years. And so, I mean, it's just all over. We've got, I think, really good coaching staffs in these programs, and it just makes all the programs better, and it makes it harder to beat teams because the coaching staffs that we have and the experiences and the talent that they can bring to these kids and share with them, and they know what it takes to play at the next level. And I think that's the key. And I wish the parents would just back off a little bit and let these coaches, they know what they're doing, they're experienced, they've played there, they've been there, they've played at high levels, and just let them work with the kids and develop the program. And everyone's here for the best interest in mind, is to give these kids great experiences, to teach them life lessons. The ones that are good enough to move on will move on. And, the coaches are there to help them in that aspect and develop these players, work with these players, and be there for questions and to feed off their experiences, that they've had as players themselves.
Great point, Bob. I like that topic of conversation as well, that there's nobody in these programs that wants to win more than the guy that has to answer the questions from the media, from the team, from the parents, from the athletic directors, from everybody. There's no doubt about it. They're trying to put their best foot forward. Try to remember that moving forward. It's not easy. And at the same time, I'd like to happily let you know that I think it's been 2017. We're into 2021 now. I haven't had an incident with an official in that amount of time. I don't think that I can recall. After I had a nice conversation, this is an honest topic here for a quick moment, too. I know we got about 15 minutes before the 10 o'clock hour here. We're going to get to our program in a second, but Thor Nelson sat me down one time after the WDA tournament, and he said, I need to talk to you about something. And if you don't know who Thor Nelson is, he's a longtime official and one of the greats in the NHL who's from Minot and moved back to the Magic City. He actually reffed the Nagano Olympics back in '96, I believe it was. And anyway, we talked and we had a conversation, and sitting down with a legendary NHL official, talking about your words about another official, there's nothing more embarrassing than that. And I think that a quick message is, you fans, get ready for this high school hockey season to start here too, Bob, is at the end of the day, hold yourselves accountable for what you're going to do. You're going to bump into these officials. They're human beings that are making peanuts to be there at the rink. It's a natural reaction if you don't get your way or you see something that you don't like on the ice to yell and make that knee-jerk reaction. But hold yourselves accountable. It's 2021. We've got a shortage of these officials across the board. Wouldn't hurt to proceed with a little more kindness. Keep that flair. Keep that will to win, but realize what you're doing sometimes, kind of like Thor Nelson had to tell me to call the dogs off, if you will. So just another quick PSA from the PSP Network. Take care of the officials and the coaches this year.
Well, without them, we don't have a game. I mean, there's three.
That's right.
There's three people that are, well, besides the ice. I have to give a shout out to the ice crew, because without the ice, we don't have a game either. But you need the officials, you need the players, you need the coaches. And if no one else is in the building, we can still have a high school hockey game. But it's a problem. And just a quick side note, I mean, youth hockey right now around the country, it's becoming a very big issue. We just had an incident in Pennsylvania with a female goalie playing in a boys' youth game, and the high school student section was saying some things I can't say on the air, and it made national attention. And it's getting ugly out there, and we're not getting officials anymore. And without it, we're not going to have a game. So just remember that our young men and women that play boys and girls high school hockey, you love to go to watch the games at, we're all human. I make mistakes on my website. The officials are going to make mistakes. The coaches make mistakes. We're all human, and we're out there to do the best job we can. And we're not out there to give one team an advantage. And we just let's all work together to make it a positive experience and have great crowds and great energy and just have a great season, and let everyone do their jobs and be supportive, and let's have fun and make it a great experience for the kids.
Good segue into this. We're just human beings making our predictions on who's going to the state high school hockey tournament. And now there's another team inside the West region, so there's 10 total, and only 4 are going to get in, and we're going to make our predictions right now on who we think those 4 will be. It's all for fun. It's based on the numbers. It's based on what we've seen, and it's something that you can look at, use it for locker room material or billboard material if you need to here, Bob. If you're not one of these 4 that cracks our top 4 getting in to the state high school hockey tournament here this year. PSP Network's Final 4 prediction. Are you ready for this? Drum roll.
I'm ready.
Hang on tight. Don't slash our tires when we come to your town. broadcasting these games on the PSP network. Let's start here. We lost a lot of friends last year at the VFW Sports Center and Wachter Arena. We're bringing some back. Demons are going back to the state tournament here in 2021. I'm sure there's some guys sitting on their couches in the capital city right now celebrating that, saying, you're a moron. We should have been there last year as well. I think the Demons are going back to the state high school hockey tournament. Where they finish, I have them at number 4 inside the West region here this year. I've got mine at high in the mix as well at number 3 inside the West region. I think they just have enough offense coming back. Goaltending again, a question mark here. They're always in the mix. What does that mean? Is it legacy? Is it century? Not this year in my mind. It's the Jamestown Blue Jays that are going to finish inside the top 2 inside the West region. And you see them on the screen right there, the Coyotes from Williston. I've been on record since last year saying that if all those kids come back, the Williston Coyotes are going to win the West region for the first time ever. And I think the Coyotes are going to be number 1 here in 21-22. Bob, where do you fall in line? These are my picks. Yours truly with Coyotes 1, Blue Jays 2, Magi 3, Demons 4. Do you have something similar to this, Bob?
Yeah, and if you're not one of the 4 that I mentioned, I'm pretty similar to you, but if you're not one of the 4, my wife gives me the nickname Bad Luck Bob. So if you're not one of the top 4, you probably have pretty good chances to make it into the top 4 because I usually don't have very good luck with betting and predictions. But I as well think Bismarck High, just not knowing anything about legacy right yet other than they've got a great coaching staff. They're not knowing numbers and who's going where from the Bantams. And same thing with Century. Very experienced staff. They've got some players back. But, again, I don't know anything about what they're getting from the feeder system, and they just took a big hit with graduation. So I've got Bismarck High number 4. Might be a little off here, but I think they've got a good enough nucleus if they can get a goaltender, and they've got a good staff that's going to develop. And even though they're low on numbers this year with a small JV and just a small group of kids, I think they've got enough to work around there where I have them as number 3. Williston, I'm going to flip-flop you on this. Jamestown beat them, I think, 6-3 and 8-1 last year. And each of them lost maybe 1 or 2 key players. Is that enough to make up those amount of goals? I'm going to say right now no until they prove me wrong. And I think Jamestown is got a little more of a chip on their shoulder because of the way last season ended. And I think with the football team and some of the athletes that play that sport coming in on a high, I'm going to flip those 2 around and go Williston 2 and Jamestown 1.
We're pretty par for the course. It's going to be interesting to see how they shake out. You want to see what the coaches think in Western North Dakota? Let's unveil that now with our coaches poll here for 21-22. Tweet at us at Network PSP. Let us know if you think we're right, wrong, or right par for the course. John Willert checking in tonight, former coach of the Magi. Coach, great to hear from you. Glad things are going well for you. We'll be seeing you a lot more now. High school hockey season is here. Where do the coaches have the teams in the West? Start with the North Stars from Hazen. That number 10. Number 9, Botno Rugby. This is according to the coaches across all of the WDA now. And when you look at this, Bob, Hazen, then Botno, Mandan comes in at number 8. Let's take a look at number 7. Dallas Kuntz's Midgets from Dickinson. Number 6, Legacy Sabres. That could be a shocker right there. What do you expect? I mean, we know that we've got good coaching in Mario Lamoureux and that whole staff. Buckle up tight. That's going to be interesting. You want to know what else is interesting? There's 5 spots left on the screen, and you've got Legacy that's in the mix here, Dickinson and Mandan and Botno. And by the way, in my opinion, 6, 7, 8, and 9, no offense, Hazen at 10, but 6 through 9 here could shock everybody and be one of those teams that ends up inside the top 3 inside of North Dakota high school hockey in the West region. Let's take a look at what the coaches think. Number 5, the Demons come in the number 5 spot. This is according to all the coaches. Did they all vote, by the way?
All voted.
Every one of them voted in the West region. Number 4, where do the coaches have the Magi come in at number 4 inside the West? How do you like that? Minot High, Bismarck High, Botno, Mandan, Dickinson, Legacy, and we have 3 spots left. That means Jamestown, Williston, and Century are still to come. Oh, People are falling out of their chairs left and right. This is according to the coaches of the West Region, Bob. Let me tell you. Century Patriots at number 3. That means that the Blue Jays and the Coyotes are the favorites inside the West, according to the coaches. Jamestown, number 2. That means that it could be the year for the Williston Coyotes. Oh, my goodness, buckle up tight. It really has been some progression inside of North Dakota high school hockey on the west side of the state. When you look at the Coyotes and Blue Jays, no knock on anybody. Now, keep in mind what I'm saying here. It's just been such a staple that 3, 4, and 5 have never been Century, Minot, and Bismarck in that order. Sometimes, of course, you got a Magi team that might not make the state tournament, or you got a Century team that might finish second instead of first, or a Demon team that falls to 5 and still finds a way. But very rarely do you see Williston and Jamestown ahead of the big 3, quote-unquote, if you will, with Century, Minot, and Bismarck High. Legacy at 6. That could be the sleeper of all sleepers. You never know what they're going to bring to the table. Your thoughts on this? I mean, this is going to be a fun year, nevertheless.
Yeah, as I was tabulating everything up, and I'll get everything up on the IndyHighSchoolHockey.com website tomorrow. West Region, East Region, the state coaches poll, and the girls poll will all be unveiled tomorrow, and then I'll get those sent out to the coaches to distribute to the media. But I guess the two that I was surprised at, I was surprised Century was up as high as they were with the graduation losses that they had. And Botno, I'll use this as bulletin material because I think you're definitely better than number 9. I was surprised that the coaches put them that low with the returners that they have and some of the other teams' lineups. And again, Legacy, I think, is in a good spot kind of in that middle because we don't know. They could be a little farther down than this, or they might be up in that top 4. We just don't know. And until we drop the puck, I think that's a good spot, that 5-6 for them, because that's kind of right in the middle. And but yeah, I think it's going to, Hazen's going to have their work cut out for them, and we'll see what Coach Fry can do there. And we hope that they'll get a couple wins this year and propel their program. But I think after that, there's going to be some interesting contests. But I think that the top 2 are the top 2 of the coaches. I think we both had them without meeting and looking at our picks. And the state coaches poll is a little bit different with our West teams, but I think the top 4, 5, 6 teams are going to be there at the end battling it out.
Oh, it's going to be fun, isn't it? Coaches poll from the WDA again. Find it online as well at NorthDakotaHighSchoolHockey.com. Bob, it's been a lot of fun, as it always is, talking high school hockey with you. We'll be, before you know it, having the same conversation out here at the PSP office, getting ready for the state high school hockey tournament. Or maybe we'll do that the way we did a few years back, right at the Shields Arena.
That was fun.
It's at Shields Arena this year,
Yep.
correct? Yeah,
Yep.
that is correct. We'll have that entire tournament coverage for you on the PSP Network. Our schedule on the PSP Network will be released coming up at the start of next week. I know that we're already rolling into it. Minot High does open up next week against Devils Lake. We will have that game for you on Monday, of course, on the PSP Network. The Magi are playing, count PSP Network in, basically look at it like that with a video broadcast across the board. Bob, your closing thoughts on the preview show brought to you by Schatz Crossroads Restaurant here for 2021-22.
Well, I've got about 3 more days, and then I'll have 546 players entered in with the 31 teams and 364 games entered in before Sunday night. So once I get through this week, then I just have 2 more kind of hectic times, and that's Christmas time when all 31 teams are playing in the holiday tournaments, and then February getting ready for the Outstanding Senior Award, and then the state tournament and region tournaments. So I've kind of 3 areas where it gets really busy. So I'm glad to get this one done. It's a lot of data entry, but I'm ready to drop the puck on Monday and get this season started and see what happens early on. And I just want to say good luck to all 31 teams, boys and girls around the state, and also to the JV players, and just have a great season, enjoy it, and we don't have COVID. I really felt, just quickly, I really felt bad for Botno last year. They make the state tournament, and then they can't go to the state tournament site and experience it with all the teams there. And so I'm glad we're able to go back to a regular format this year for both region and state and do it the way we've always done it and get that experience. But again, thanks for having me, and I know we'll be talking throughout the year and your support of our site, and I just want to hope that everyone has a great holiday coming up, and just excited to get the season going and have a great year wherever you're at, and let the teams fight it out. And we just made our predictions, but the teams will fight for their spots and earn their spots, and we'll just be there to see where we stand at the end.
Should be fun. It should be mentioned as well that Bob's only job really isn't NorthDakotaHighSchoolHockey.com. He also runs the Mesa Arena. So thanks for what you do for the hockey community, Bob, across the board. I mean, the West region is very grateful for the Mesa Arena, that Pepsi rink, and what you and your staff do there as well.
Well, I'm just the face of it, but I've got a great staff and a great park district, and Larry McFall, Brandon McFall, my 2 assistant managers. I mean, I get to sit up and do all the scheduling and do all the budget stuff, and they do all the ice and the facility. So you can't run it without a great staff. And I've got a few laundry list of other people on my staff I can't name here because we don't have time, but. It's great to be. I love being around the rink. I love being around the Doros and the Minot State and all the high school teams when they come in, and it just makes the winter go by so fast because there's games all the time, and the calendar just seems to flip so quick. So in the cold North Dakota, my winters go fast.
They certainly do. Bob, thanks again for everything that you do. Thanks for being here tonight. Don't forget to visit NorthDakotaHighSchoolHockey.com throughout the season. NDHighSchoolHockey.com. Big thanks to Bob Gillen joining us tonight for the preview show. Got to tell you, the texts and messages are already rolling in from Williston. Roll Yotes is the ones that we've seen so far. They're predicted to be the team to beat inside of the WDA for 21-22. It's going to be a fun year. Buckle up tight, hockey fans. North Dakota high school hockey season starts now. Big thanks again to Schatz Crossroads Restaurant bringing you the preview show tonight. We'll have a full slate on the PSP Network. Like and follow us to stay up to date with all things high school hockey. Buckle the fight straps. Get ready for a good season. Thanks again, Bob, for joining us.
Thank you again. Have a great night.
Nick Holberg signing off from the PSP Network offices south of the Magic City. Till Monday night, good night, and God bless.